If you're a serious hunter and you haven't tried Hex yet, this is the edge you're missing. Hunters have always talked about animals having a sixth sense, feeling you before they ever see you. Hex works by completely blocking your body's natural energy, helping you get closer without tipping them off. Most hunters don't believe it at first, until they hunt in it. And once they do, it makes them believers fast. Go to hexhunting.com. That's HECS hunting.com. And use code WAYPOINT to save $20 on a full Hex system.
TaxAct knows every small business owner has different tax filing needs. With TaxAct, you can file yourself with the help of an expert, or TaxAct can do it all for you. You're the boss, the head honcho, the top banana. And TaxAct is like your loyal, trusty tax aide, ready to pounce on any tax needs you might have. TaxAct is dying to pounce on some small business tax needs. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
Howdy, folks, and welcome back to the Hunting Stories podcast, The Hunter's Brief, the quick roundup where we keep it hunter-minded, conservation-forward, and allergic to bad information. This week, we're doing a special Colorado-focused episode because a proposal being called and in quotes, fur ban just cleared an important hurdle with the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission, and depending on how it's written, it could reshape furbearer hunting and trapping in the state without technically ever banning harvesting of the animals. Here's the plan. I'm going to break down basically what the proposal actually does and says, and the arguments for it and against it. Also, how it ties into Colorado's broader furbearer management debates, and what happens next. So you can talk about it like a grown-up at the trailhead, or at least like a semi-trained adult around a tailgate. Let's get going. At a packed and tense public meeting on March 4th, the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission voted 6-4 to move citizen petition forward into a rulemaking phase. The petition aims to prohibit the commercial sale, barter, or trade of wildlife fur and certain furbearer parts in Colorado. Importantly, at least as described right now, it does not ban hunting or trapping of furbearers outright. It's targeting the for-profit market side of the equation, which oddly enough doesn't include cowboy hats. Can you imagine Colorado without cowboy hats? Either way, Colorado Parks and Wildlife staff had recommended denying the petition, and multiple reports say most public commentators at the meeting opposed moving it forward as well. Still, the vote means this isn't over. It's now headed into the part of the process where actual regulatory language and carve-outs can change, and where a, quote, no big deal idea can become a very big deal idea. So this matters because even if you don't trap, this is one of those policy domino fights about whether states can effectively end an activity by removing the economic outlet, and whether wildlife commissions should be making these calls through rulemaking instead of the legislature or the ballot box. If you've ever seen a simple regulation turn into a 40-page brochure, you already know this is where the fun starts. So let's talk a little bit about what the proposal is actually trying to ban and what it exempts. Let's translate the headline. The petition is framed as a ban on the commercial sale of wildlife fur, not a blanket ban on hunting or trapping. In the petition text, the requested change is to amend Colorado Regulation 2 CCR 406-018 to prohibit the commercial sale, barter, or trade of furbearer parts, things like hides, pelts, skins, claws, and similar items, while keeping limited exemptions. Those exemptions, they do matter, but in the petition draft, there are carve-outs for things like hand-tied fishing flies, sold as a finished product only, certain felted western hats, not all of them, and scientific or educational uses are also allowed. And it also discusses exemptions for secondhand vintage fur products. Another key detail reported locally is that the proposal wouldn't affect furs from farmed animals or wild animals taken outside of Colorado. So this is very specifically aimed at Colorado's in-state wildlife commercialization. And for anyone thinking this won't affect much, Colorado's own materials describe a long list of huntable furbearers, everything from beaver, bobcat, to martens, foxes, skunks, raccoons, and coyotes. And this matters because the practical question isn't, can I harvest a fur bearer? It becomes, what can I legally do with it afterwards? That's a major shift for trappers, some rural families, and anyone using pelts as part of a lawful use. Nothing says modern wildlife policy like trying to define a cowboy hat in regulatory language. To be fair, we're going to start with the pro-petition argument, right, in as plain language as I can. Supporters, including the petition sponsor, argue that this is about ending commercial wildlife markets and modernizing fur bearer management. The petition leans heavily on the idea that commercial markets historically drove wildlife declines and that modern conservation framework emphasized removing those initiatives. Supporters also argue Colorado lacks consistent population and harvest data for many fur bearers, and that trapping can have non-target impacts, including concerns about sensitive species. Their pitch is basically keep regulated harvests if the state wants it, but remove the profit motive and tighten management. And you'll hear an ethical argument too, less about conservation math, more about whether it's morally acceptable to kill animals primarily for fur in 2026. This matters because the site is aiming at the cultural center. There's not starting with ban trapping tomorrow. They're starting with end commercialization, which can be an easier message to non-hunters. In politics, the label is half the battle, and commercial market hits different than my grandpa's trap line. Hey hunters, have you ever had one of those stories, the ones that you didn't want to tell? The ones that end in failure? Yeah, I've been there. Actually, you know what? The culprit for me usually is bad optics, or worse, lack of using my optics at all. Picture this. I spot a trophy buck, or an antelope, or an elk, whatever it may be. My heart is racing, but the blurry view, or I just can't quite identify exactly what I'm looking at, it has me second guessing. Well, that's where Vortex Optics comes in. With crystal clear glass and rugged durability, Vortex gives you the confidence to take the shot. Don't let poor optics ruin your story. Make every moment count. Upgrade to Vortex and turn your hunting tales into triumphs. Visit vortexoptics.com today.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Now let's dive into the anti-petition argument and why the meeting got pretty tense. Opponents, hunters, trappers, some county officials, and supporters of the North American model of wildlife conservation as traditionally applied, say this is ideology dressed up as conservation, and that it risks undermining science-based wildlife management by using the commission process to achieve what voters have rejected in other forms. A big point you'll hear, Colorado and the West broadly already rejects true market hunting, but regulated fur harvest is part of a long-standing lawful use and in many places can support wildlife management goals, including targeted removal where conflicts happen. There also is a practical argument. If you remove legal markets, you may reduce participation and reporting, reduce incentives for nuisance work, and shift costs onto agencies and landowners. And culturally, opponents see this as another step in a broader campaign to restrict hunting and trapping by degrees, especially given recent Colorado fights over predators and hunting methods. Also worth noting, Colorado Parks and Wildlife reportedly increased meeting security after threats and high turnout. So even before any rule changes, the temperature on this issue is already way, way too high. Another thing that I will throw out there as a note is this was brought up in the city of Denver as something that was voted down by the people of Denver, and now they've taken it statewide. But this all matters because this is a real collision point between public wildlife trust management and political advocacy, and how much authority commissions should exercise when value conflicts show up at the door. If your wildlife meeting needs security screening, congrats, you're officially doing politics and not just biology. The bigger backdrop is Colorado's already reworking furbearer management. So that's one reason this fight is happening right now. Colorado is midstream on broader furbearer conversations. CPW has described a stakeholder process that brought together agriculture, sports persons, animal welfare organizations, and conservation advocates. And amazingly, they found some shared ground, like science-based management, ethical treatment, and better public education. That being said, they didn't agree on everything, but it's a good start. And at the same time, CPW is also pushing forward species-specific strategy work, like a beaver conservation and management strategy that's explicitly about increasing and sustaining beaver and beaver-influenced wetlands in a suitable habitat, while still addressing harvest and conflict tools. And at a nuts and bolts level, CPW's public info highlights things like bobcat sealing requirements and the mechanics of how furbearer hunting works in Colorado. It's important because any change to commercialization intersects with enforcement, compliant, and how the agency tracks take. Even if the first sale rule dies later, the broader push for clearer data, clearer rules, and clearer public buy-in isn't going away. Hunters should want that conversation because if we don't participate, we get managed at, not managed with. Wildlife management is like packing for an elk camp. The more you ignore the details, the heavier it gets later. What happens next, and what you listeners can do? Well, because the commission moved this into rulemaking, the next phase is where language gets drafted, exceptions get debated, and unintended consequences either get fixed or baked in. If you're in Colorado, watch for the next commission meeting where this comes back up. Reports indicate that's going to be sometime in May and is the next major touch point. Submit your comments, show up if you can, and keep it respectful. Decision makers stop listening the minute we start acting like the internet comment sections in camouflage. If you're outside Colorado, treat this as a case study. These commercialization plays are showing up more often, and they don't always look like traditional anti-hunting legislation at first glance. All right, guys, that's it. I hope that was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a special edition of the Hunting Stories podcast, The Hunter's Brief. If you want more of these quick, high-signal explainers when a big issue hits the fan, or the commission agenda, as it were, make sure you subscribe and share the episode with a buddy who still thinks that rulemaking is what happens when you forget to silence your phone in a tree stand. And don't forget, Monday, we're back with the full hunting episodes, or hunting story episodes. And until next time, guys, hunt ethically, stay involved, and leave the woods better than you found them. Thank you.
How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Tap the banner or visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
LifeLock, how can I help?
The IRS said I filed my return,
but I haven't.
1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has paid the price of identity fraud.
What do I do?
My refund, though.
I'm freaking out.
Don't worry, I can fix this.
LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed and gets your money back with up to $3 million in coverage.
I'm so relieved.
No problem. I'll be with you every step of the way.
1 in 4 was a fraud-paying American. Not anymore. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.